Messalina and the contest in the brothel. How true is this story? Few figures from ancient Rome have aroused as much interest and controversy as Valeria Messalina. Wife of the Emperor Claudius, protagonist of palace intrigues, and even a symbol of Roman moral decadence, her reputation is full of stories that seem taken from a novel. One of the most scandalous is the famous story of the contest in the brothel. According to this tradition, Messalina, disguised as a sex worker, would have competed to see who could serve the most clients in a single night. But the big question is, how real is this story? Or is it simply a fiction created to discredit her and make her a symbol of corruption? Today, we will explore this intriguing anecdote through historical sources, the culture of the time and modern judgments. Sweet souls lost in the night. I am Lysiska, and I wonder if you have already felt the irresistible desire to stay here with me. If my stories have captivated you and my voice has whispered secrets from ancient times, I invite you to follow this channel and activate the bell. This way, you will not miss any of our meetings. But if you really want to win my heart and be part of this eternal journey, you can leave your offering on PayPal or Patreon. You will find the links in the description. After all, generous souls are always rewarded. Before we dive into the history of the contest, we need to understand who Messalina was. Married to the Emperor Claudius around 39 AD, Valeria Messalina was part of one of the most influential families in Rome. Through the accounts of historians such as Tacitus, Suetonius, and Juvenal, Messalina has been portrayed as a hedonistic, manipulative, and boundless woman. But this image does not occur in a vacuum. Roman history shows us that many powerful women acquired negative reputations fueled by the chroniclers of their time. Was this a tactic to reduce their influence, or did it reflect, in part, uncomfortable truths? This is where our central story comes in. According to the most famous account, Messalina, disguised and under the pseudonym Lysiska, entered a brothel and challenged the sex workers to see who could satisfy the most clients in one night. According to Juvenal's satire and the chronicles of historians such as Suetonius, the empress not only won the contest, but continued to work until dawn, far outperforming the others. This scandal-ridden account has gone down in history as evidence of Messalina's alleged nymphomania. But how plausible is this story? Should we accept the account as presented by Roman historians, or are there reasons to suspect that political and moral motives distorted it? When we talk about Messalina's historical reputation, the main sources are three chroniclers, Tacitus, Suetonius, and Juvenal. However, it is important to remember that each of them had their own goals. Tacitus, considered one of Rome's most rigorous historians, Tacitus was also known for his criticism of corruption and abuse of power in the empire. Although not as exaggerated as Juvenal, his description of Messalina emphasizes her political conspiracies more than her sex life. Suetonius, author of the Lives of the 12 Caesars, Suetonius offers accounts intended to entertain, filled with sensational anecdotes about emperors and their families. His version of Messalina is less concerned with historical truth and more with emotional impact. Juvenal. This is where we find the most graphic account of the contest in the brothel. Juvenal was a satirical poet, known for his exaggerations in criticizing Roman society. His description of Messalina does not seek to inform, but to illustrate the decadence of the elite of his time. It is essential to understand that the works of these authors were not conceived as impartial histories, but as narratives loaded with moral and political judgment. Historically, it was common to use scandalous tales to discredit political figures. In the case of Messalina, her fall from power was brutal. Accused of plotting against Claudius, she was executed in 48 AD. After her death, the emperor's new political circle had every interest in sullying his legacy to justify loyalty to Claudius. Beyond politics, the stories also reflect the social and cultural tensions of the time. women in power were viewed with suspicion and often demonized. Targeting their sex lives was a recurring tactic. The personal became the political. To better understand the history of the contest, it is useful to reflect on what a brothel represented in ancient Rome. Lupanars were marginal and essential spaces, places frowned upon but omnipresent in Roman life. The very idea of an empress going down to a brothel signals a transgression that resonated deeply with Roman values. Here not only is Messalina's morality called into question, but also the social order. Of course, this association also makes the story more questionable. The idea of an empress engaging in such a public and degrading act seems highly unlikely given the strict surveillance that surrounded imperial figures. This reinforces the possibility that the account is more a propaganda tool than historical fact. There is a reason why narratives like this have prevailed over time. Messalina became an archetypal figure, representing the decadence and excess often associated with Rome. However, she is also a glaring case of how powerful women were reduced to sex symbols to be stripped of their political agency. Her image as the Great Corrupt has been perpetuated not only by historians, but by works of art, literature and films throughout the centuries. Each reinterpretation has been based, to a greater or lesser extent, on the original propaganda narratives. Fortunately, modern historians have begun to re-evaluate the stories about Messalina. Rather than seeing her as an exclusively hedonistic figure, many interpret her as someone who skillfully navigated the complex waters of Roman politics, albeit with a tragic end. Her depiction as a woman without limits seems more the product of a smear campaign orchestrated after her execution than a reflection of reality. The current consensus is that the famous brothel contest is at best an exaggeration, and at worst a pure invention. That said, no one can say for sure. After all, imperial Rome was full of secrets and excesses unknown to us. The story of Messalina allows us to reflect on how narratives shape our perception of the past. Beyond the scandal, the central question is how fair these representations have been. Are we revising the legacy of a powerful woman or reproducing the same prejudices that existed in her time? As we unravel this account, we are also faced with an important question for today's audience. How do we want to remember historical figures who have been vilified? The story of Messalina is not only a testimony about ancient Rome, but a warning about how power can be used to shape the truth in ways that suit us. So how true is the story of the brothel contest? The answer, as with many parts of ancient history, is complicated. Most likely the account is a combination of distorted facts and fiction intended to entertain and reinforce political and cultural points. However, her impact is far from trivial. Messalina remains a topic of debate because her figure shows us how myths can obscure real historical identity. She reminds us that history is not only about facts, but also about the stories we choose to tell and the lessons we draw from them. For you, the viewer, the question remains, do you think Messalina was a historical figure who deserved to be discredited, or a victim of propagandistic narratives? The debate remains open, and ultimately, the decision is yours.